Hey guys, it's Just Jame here, and I want to do something a little bit different. A couple of weeks ago, the Plandemic documentary, or part of the documentary, was released, and pretty much immediately I saw some articles that came out that were basically immediately discrediting it, and I want to read over two of those articles. I'm not going to read the whole thing because if I commented on the whole article, we would be here forever because there's a lot to it. But there's two in particular. This first one is by Forbes. It's called Why It's Important to Push Back on Plandemic and How to Do It. So, first of all, I'm all for questioning things and science and information, okay? So if I think I'm wrong on something, I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper. I was one of those people. This says, by now you've heard about or even seen the video Plandemic that's been spreading like wildfire through social media. This article is not the one you should give to your friend or relative or coworker who shared this video. That would be me. If you want that article, you won't find a better one than this one from Beth Skwarecki at Lifehacker. We'll get to that one, Beth. So second paragraph. This is an article for those who recognize the video as rife with conspiracy theories, misinformation, and false claims, those who are frustrated and unsettled and disappointed in who they see sharing it, and those who want to know what to say when they see it. It says, to recognize the propaganda like this for what it is and why it is so important to speak up about this particular video. Plandemic interviews a scientist who was appropriately discredited for scientific misconduct and fraud. She is a known established anti-vaccine advocate. So first of all, the whole point of the documentary was her saying that she felt like she wasn't appropriately discredited. She felt like that was the whole point of the thing, was her saying like, hey, her speaking out and being a whistleblower. So it's really confusing to me how they want to protect all these other whistleblowers, but not necessarily the ones that don't like what they have to say. And then they call her an anti-vaxxer, which is irritating because it feels like conspiracy theory and anti-vaccine, it's like they think that label automatically discredits you. If you put that label on somebody, then they're crazy and they're anti-science, or they believe in pseudoscience. That's one of the other words they like to use. But this whole article, I think I counted 15 times they call people like me a conspiracy theorist. Not one shred of evidence. It goes over like psychologically, like it says, well, let's just get to it. One of the things, why did my smart, thoughtful, informed friend share this? As if to imply that in my sharing it, I was not being smart or thoughtful or informed when I shared it. It's full of like little passive-aggressive digs like that, if you will, like patronizing and just, oh, your poor friend they weren't smart. They didn't know better. That's why they shared it. That's the whole theme of this article, and I don't appreciate it. What's most upsetting to many people is who they see sharing it. Reasonable, intelligent people who normally don't fall for conspiracy theories or pseudoscience. See what they did there? They automatically told you that this is a conspiracy and it's wrong. Again, no evidence. They are taken in by the video's slick appearance and by its use of persuasive techniques, and really want to know what you think. So you need to approach them respectfully about it. And you do need to approach them respectfully, but I don't know, like the majority of this article talks about it says the three reasons why people are like taken in by it, and it says it's, you know, that it appears to be a real real documentary. And it says, first, it taps into people's uncertainty, anxiety, and need for answers, common reasons anyone is attracted to a conspiracy theory. Second, it is packed packaged very professionally and uses common conventions people already associate with factual documentaries. Again, it automatically calls it incorrect. And like the thing is who's calling it incorrect? Is it the CDC? Because the documentary is calling into question the CDC. So it seems to me like several other somebodies need to be discrediting it besides just them, if that's where they're getting that it's incorrect. Third, it successfully exploits ancient but extremely effective methods of persuasion. Now, where I come from, that means you have a good argument, but what do I know? Everyone has so many unanswered questions, including scientists, doctors, national leaders, and others we ordinarily look to for answers. Now, the frustrating thing here is that some people do have answers, and they're not being allowed to give them. Some people are saying, hey, this is how I'm treating my patients. Some people are saying, hey, this is something that you can do. Some people are saying, hey, this is something you can do. And they're being banned on YouTube. They're being called out as liars and told that they are not correct and things like that. We're not even being allowed to listen to them to decide for ourselves. So to say that nobody has answers is not true, because a lot of people are not being allowed to give their answers to this problem. The lighting, narrative structure, the pacing, use of imagery, camera angles, editing techniques, these are all common documentary filmmaking conventions that we've come to associate with factual information. There it is again. I'm telling you guys, this article has nothing in it that tells you why it's not factual, why it's misinformation, why it's pseudoscience, why it's a conspiracy theory. It just wants you to know that it is one, and that's just, no. Alright, so let's go on to, I'm sick of this one. Let's go on to the next one. This is the one that in the beginning it says if you want it to be debunked, to read this one. It says there's no better one, so we'll see about that. If you found that Plandemic video convincing, read this too. That's the name of the article. It's from vitals.com, I think. There's a video out there that claims to show a scientist being silenced by the government. Now think about this for a minute. If, let's just say, it's true. Let's just say old Dr. Judy is telling the truth, and she was silenced by the government. Don't you think that, like, we should look into that? Every other person who comes out with these kind of claims, we always want to take them so seriously, and now this woman is saying that this gigantic organization, this global entity, because that's really what it is. I mean, the CDC has offices all over the world, is she's reporting that she's being bullied by them and like inappropriate things are going on. And this is not the first time we've had things like this happen. So I'm just saying, why are we all so quick to discredit her and other people? So right off the bat, there are a few subtle truths here, but nearly all of the actionable advice, whether to wear a mask or accept a vaccine, for example, is dangerously unsupported. If you're having trouble figuring out whether to trust this video or what information in it is true and what is false, we'll break it down for you. Basically, if you can't think for yourself, we'll tell you what to think. The larger truths. Okay, for one, money runs a lot of things in this country, and Big Pharma has more power than it probably should. Yes, exactly. That is the whole reason for her video, in my opinion. Like, she is kind of blaming Big Pharma, Big Vaccine, really, which has an unquestionable contract with the government to say that we need vaccines and that we are not allowed to question them. So right off the bat, there seems to be like some conflict there that maybe we should look into, because the fact that it's saying Big Pharma has more power than it should, yes, and her video, like her saying that is, I mean, like, big science, big pharma, big vaccine, they're really all the same thing. Like, there are people out there in this world, I know this is hard to believe, that don't have your best interest in mind and that don't care that you are the healthiest person that you strive to be. They just don't. They care about a paycheck, they care about glory and their name and things like that, and that's something we should be considering. I'm not saying everything that she said is correct. What I am saying is that we shouldn't be so quick to judge somebody and throw the label of conspiracy theorist on them until we have investigated the full situation. This video paints the U.S. government as untrustworthy, a statement I think everyone can agree with, although people of different political parties may have different ideas about which parts of the government they distrust. Yes, the government we should have a healthy distrust for the government. But as we've discovered here before, the real experts discuss the uncertainty of the facts about our situation. Nobody alive today can possibly have 100% of the answers, so we should remain skeptical of anybody who says they can explain it all. How can we be skeptical if they won't even let us hear people who are saying they have answers? Remember, if you want to believe what you are hearing, you should put your guard up just a little bit more. And I agree with that. I agree that we should all be neutral in our searching and in our learning 100%, but it just doesn't seem like they are even reading the other side to know what's going on over there. It seems like somebody's just telling them it's a bad thing and they're believing it. The video is professionally, expertly produced. It looks like a documentary. Again, this is the same argument as the last article, same argument as the one from Forbes, that, oh, it looks like a real documentary, and so we could see why it would trick you. But I expect in the coming weeks we'll learn more about who commissioned and funded this video. We do know that Dr. Mikovits, the scientist being interviewed, is selling a book that's currently a #1 bestseller on Amazon, which to me this implies that she's just doing this to sell her book. Her book is published in partnership with Children's Health Defense, an organization led by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And for those of you who don't know, some people don't even like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's big in the anti-vaccine community, but there are some people who don't like him either, so they don't trust him, I guess. Its website features anti-scientific conspiracy theories, there it is again, including claims that strongly imply vaccines and cell phone towers are giving children Alzheimer's disease. So I went and read the article, and I'm not sure why it's anti-science. It is a well-cited article, and they're making things like that sound like it's silly. Like, oh, it's silly to think that cell phones could cause damage to us. We don't know. It very well could be. And I think that it's just bad reporting to just talk about things like that and just make it out like they're dumb. I read that article that they're referring to, and I thought it was a sound argument. It's not saying that it's true. It's saying that, like, there needs to be more looking into it. The Robert F. Kennedy Jr. article on the site they're referring to. Anyway, it calls herd immunity absurd and says it's debatable whether vaccines save lives. These are flatly untrue statements. So there is a large number of doctors, nurses, and parents who have been and are continuing to call vaccines into question for their safety and efficacy. And to say that that is flatly untrue, it's just not. Like, if the number of people, and it continues to grow, like many nurses that I know will tell you, like, oh yeah, I don't give vaccines like to my children scheduled, etc. I don't know. I just think to say that it's largely untrue is that's just a lie. We don't know if it's not true. We don't know the efficacy of vaccines because nobody will do any further testing to it. And you have to understand that, like, why would they? Like, why would they look for problems when it's a very, very lucrative business and it's a government contract that has no legal ramifications? You cannot sue a vaccine company for a vaccine injury. So you've got, and it's a mandatory thing. These are mandatory vaccine schedules. So you're being forced into a product that has no liability on it. So then imagine then if they did find out that there was a problem with those vaccines, then think about the liability and how much money they could potentially be owing. And the reason they have no liability, this was done in the 80s, was because they said that vaccines will never be safe. And so basically these vaccine companies went and said, like, to the government and said that they can't make better vaccines because they're always getting sued. And so the vaccine company said, okay, well then now you can't get sued because vaccines are never going to be safe, so just keep giving them. There are no studies done that compare these things. That nobody knows what happens when you give a 12-hour-old baby a shot for a disease that they can only get for having sex and IV drug use. Why don't we just not let the baby go home if we think they're going to be exposed to sex and IV drug use? Doesn't that seem like a better idea until we find out for certainty what it's doing to that 12-hour-old baby and their immune system? 72 doses of 17 vaccines. We have no idea what that is doing to our population. We are an experiment. So to talk badly about people who are, I'm not even an anti-vaccine person. I'm for science and for safety and making sure that we are checking ourselves. Okay. So it says, it's talking about, again, it's talking about the Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s website, and where it's saying that it's debatable whether vaccines save lives. So is this anti-vaccine propaganda? Like it wants you to make sure it wants to make sure you know that the anti-vaxxers are the crazy people. It certainly seems to come from that background, but in the video, the interviewer asks whether Dr. Judy is an anti-vaxxer, and she says no. To the average viewer, that might seem reassuring, but if you've spent any time listening to anti-vaxxers, you know it's a huge red flag. I'm not anti-vaccine, but is the science denier's version of I'm not racist, but. So I guess I'm the equivalent to a racist because I'm calling into question the protocol. What a scientific article, honestly, to compare questioning whether or not you should be injecting your child with vaccines that have not been studied or tested at all to racism. That's great, because you know racism is the solution for everything nowadays. How much of Mikovits's backstory is true? Impartial reporting tells a very different story than the version of her backstory related in Plandemic. This recent Washington Post article, and before I go on, just know that according to allsides.com, the Washington Post is not at all impartial reporting. They are very much on the left side of the aisle. This article is useful if you want to read more about her. So I read this article, and it discredits her by assuming you know how great and wonderful your new mask is. There is a whole community of free-thinking, science-based, independent researchers who are doctors, nurses, parents, and very sick children, parents of very sick children, who are searching for truth and answers when they are inevitably disappointed by the healthcare system. These articles are all discrediting them without giving any proof or scientific evidence to back it up. The number of nurses alone who do not like to take the flu shot and don't if they don't have to is shocking. You go ask a nurse that you know if they take the flu shot or if they had a choice if they would take the flu shot. So the Washington Post article that I just referred to, it says, who is Judy Mikovits in Plandemic, the coronavirus conspiracy video just banned from social media. So automatically, like, this is hardly impartial reporting because it's calling her a conspiracy theorist right there. Like, just because you say, and again, this whole article, there's nothing, it's all like he said, she said kind of stuff. Other elements of her story are exaggerated or worse. And now I will say this is talking about the SWAT team scene where like the SWAT comes in, and when it's talking about her getting arrested, that is a little dramatic to me because she says on there that I think she turned herself in. So I'm not really sure why they showed that. And again, like, I'm not even saying that everything she said is true. What I'm saying is that the reaction to what she said is completely over the top and inappropriate, and you should be questioning why so many people are upset about her speaking up and speaking out. This is America. The events she was involved in were all covered in news stories and in science journals at the time. And again, like, a lot of this stuff is assuming that the news is going to be unbiased and things like that. Like, the CDC and vaccines in general are so well protected by, like, you just don't ever really hear anything bad about them. Anyways. So they make reference to her saying that because of the whole HIV thing that people lost lives, and they're saying that that is not true, that a delay in publication did not cause lives. What she was saying there was that they were giving the wrong treatment for the HIV. Also, every scientist wants to be known for something, so who can blame her for thinking she was onto something? This whole article, they just paint her like this terrible person, and I really have a problem with that. Like, right off the bat, there's really nothing other than there's a couple of things where they're saying that what she discovered ended up with the chronic fatigue syndrome ended up not being proved in another study. But again, like, that's like their main reason for discrediting her, and they talk about how she was arrested, and she talks about how she was arrested. So, like, I just don't understand the mentality of people who, like, how do you guys decide who to get on board with and who not? Like, you just let the media tell you who to like and who not to like? No, there are many coronaviruses, and scientists have long known that occasionally a virus that infects one animal can end up being able to infect another, such as humans, with a small genetic change. So, when she talks about, I think she talks about the coronavirus and how, whether or not it's man-made or not, from what I understand, this was the way it was explained to me by Dr. Shiva, or maybe another, I'm not sure who I watched this from, but the way it was explained to me was that if you had, let's say you had Shakespeare, and in the middle of Shakespeare, which has a very distinct writing tone and verbiage, in the middle of Shakespeare, all of a sudden you were reading, there was a passage from Harry Potter, and a whole section of Harry Potter was in the middle of your Shakespeare. You would know that this is not like that, right? Like, you would be very certain that this came from something else. This is not, Harry Potter and Shakespeare are not, nothing about them is the same other than that they are words on paper. And so you would be quite aware, hey, there's another book inside of my book. And so from the way it was explained to me was there are 3 proteins in this novel coronavirus that are the reason it seems to be a man-made virus, and that is basically, to a trained eye, that's essentially what it looks like. And one of the proteins that they refer to is a protein that is also in the HIV virus, and there are a lot of people who think that the HIV virus is also a man-made virus. There's something called gain of function testing, and it's pretty well known that this is something that scientists do. I think even Bill Gates has talked about this. But gain of function is when they are teaching viruses to be infected. Like, Ebola used to only infect animals. They taught Ebola to infect humans. So that's what gain of function is like teaching a virus to be more sophisticated and to infect something that it wouldn't normally and naturally infect. So for it to say that occasionally a virus that infects one animal can end up being able to infect another, such as humans, with a small genetic change, maybe, maybe not. All I know is there's a lot of people talking about, in labs, talking about how they are working with viruses to make certain viruses able to be injected or infected by humans. And why we even need that, in my opinion, I don't know. That some people say for, like, biological warfare, but I just don't think that's something we as a country a road we need to be going down, in my opinion. So this here, here's an excellent 2012 book by David Quammen that follows several teams of scientists who study these events and are trying to predict and understand where it might happen next. So a big problem with, in my opinion, with like epidemiologists and even just with this whole, the way this whole virus is being handled, they go off of something called Koch's or Koch's postulate, K-O-C-H postulate, which is that one germ causes one disease. You see this like with polio. There's a lot more polio than people realize, but they want to say that the polio virus causes the polio disease, and that's not always the case. So for Koch's postulate, the 4 criteria, it says designed to establish a causative relationship between a microbe and a disease. So another thing they talk about is the germ theory, which is currently accepted scientific theory for many different diseases, but it states that microorganisms can lead to disease. These small organisms, too many to see without magnification, invading humans, and that is how you get a disease. And while that is true and you can get disease that way, I think there's more to the story. There's a lot of scientific literature and studies being done now that suggest that our stress level and our emotional state has a lot more to do with our health than just a germ or a disease. But it doesn't stop doctors from throwing an antibiotic at you anyway. Scientists have repeatedly debunked the idea that the virus was artificially made, which I already just went through about the gain of function testing. Like, we know that that's something that they do. So just because you're telling me that it's not doesn't mean that it's not still a possibility. Like, there are still scientists in America who are teaching viruses that were not harmful to humans to be harmful to humans. Its genome shows its clear relation to animal viruses. That's because it was an animal virus. Like, the coronavirus was only in animals. That's why it's got a clear relation to animal viruses. And not to coronavirus samples from the Wuhan lab. But again, except for those 3 proteins, if the whole virus looks exactly like all the regular coronavirus, except for those 3 proteins, you could argue that, oh, it's not that big of a deal. If you don't understand, or if you were wanting to mislead people or not make a big hoopla about something, you know, there's a lot of people, lots of reasons why people lie about things. It doesn't really matter to me whether it came from a lab or nature, but I think it's important to know that there are people out there who are working with viruses and purposefully trying to change them and make them able to infect people. That seems like something that the public as a whole should know. Just my opinion. So this talks about, is Dr. Fauci really a mastermind behind everything? I don't know that that's what it is. She kind of makes it out that way in the documentary. I definitely don't think Dr. Fauci is somebody that we should just be blindly trusting. I mean, this is a doctor that's never even laid a stethoscope on you. Let's not just take everything he says to the bank. And like I said, this is a little bit over dramatized. She does talk about like saying that people were paid off big time. I agree this is over dramatized, but when you actually understand what she's saying, she's talking about Dr. Fauci's organization, the NIAID, is paying off people, which is almost worse because it's not so obvious. Like, people don't tend to notice stuff like that as much, I guess. Do the FDA and Big Pharma ban cheap drugs as a money-making ploy? Dr. Judy alleges that pharmaceutical companies are only interested in drugs that they can patent and charge a ton of money for. And that's not true. She alleges that they like to keep people just healthy enough. It's kind of her that was what I took from it, is that, and that is true though. Like, there's no patent on vitamin C, I don't think, because nobody ever uses it. It's true that pharmaceutical companies' business practices involve hiking up prices of drugs, and patents help, but Mikovits is sadly underinformed if she thinks drug companies need to conspire with the FDA to pull cheap drugs from the market to make this happen. So again, like, that's not what she was saying at all. She was saying that, like, that there is money in keeping people sick, that there's an entire industry out there who depends on how sick you are. And that, in my opinion, was more of what she was saying, that there's this drug that's helping autistic children. And that drug she was referring to is still not on the market, and they're still trying to get it back on the market. Dr. Judy is sadly underinformed if she thinks drug companies need to conspire with the FDA to pull cheap drugs from the market to make this happen. If a drug works, the obvious move is to enjoy the increased demand and charge more. Not if the drug gets you well and you don't need it anymore. That's what people don't understand. You don't take a drug. If you take a drug and it gets you well and you don't need it again, then you're not going to buy it. You're not going to be a repeat customer. And that's the side of things that I feel like it seems crazy to think that there are people out there who might want you to stay sick, and I don't think people actively do that, but I do think that there's a lot of misinformation that gets spilled out in different places, and it really is your job to kind of comb through everything and determine who you trust and just to know your own information, because then when you hear something that doesn't align with that, you can go and look further and say, well, that's not, I know a lot about vitamin C, and for people to start saying that vitamin C is not going to help this virus, that's not true, and I know it's not true. I'm going to go do some more investigating. Oh, turns out vitamin C does help the virus, just like I knew it would. If you understood the chemical compounds and the way that vitamin C works on a cellular level, you wouldn't question that either. That's why knowledge is power. As for her specific claims, Dr. Judy mentions a cheap, older drug called Suramin that supposedly treats autism. The actual results of that trial were not as she describes. Not sure what she means here, because the drug is still being tested. So, again, like, they just try to put things in like, oh, it's not how she described it. You don't... I don't know. I don't like the way the whole undertone of it is just like, you just shouldn't trust these people. But again, there's no real, she does a lot of assuming. Like, if you assume that vaccines are safe, effective, and the best thing since sliced bread, then sure, I guess this article's for you. But if you have any doubts about the healthcare system at all, or the efficacy of the organizations that are telling you how to be healthy, then you're going to call BS on this pretty quick. This is referring to, I think, to another article, but it says, actually, there are 169 trials of it ongoing right now. This is about the hydroxychloroquine. It's being used so widely off-label that the supply of people who need it for other conditions like lupus is in danger. And despite her claims in this video, there isn't any solid evidence that it works. Just hope. Except for the doctors who are reporting using it with great success. And there's a lot of them. Also, since when are we against using things off-label? Like, it blows my mind to me that so many people are calling into question hydroxychloroquine. Listen, I'm for no drugs. I think any drug you put into your system is going to slow down the process, and it's going to be something you have to eliminate. But if you're deathly ill and this hydroxychloroquine is going to make you better, then why are we all of a sudden concerned about a double-blind placebo trial when none of the vaccines that we give our little babies have a double-blind placebo trial to check for them? We don't check them past a certain point. So why is it all of a sudden now, when we're in this supposed state of emergency, that we're all of a sudden checking the efficacy of a drug and how well it works and how dangerous it is? They're all dangerous. Newsflash. No conspiracy needed. That is literally the way our system is set. Okay, here's the truth. The company that makes remdesivir, one of the currently most promising COVID-19 drugs, will almost certainly charge an unreasonable amount per dose just because they can. No conspiracy needed. That is literally the way our system is set up. Anybody who thinks Big Pharma needs a conspiracy to make money hasn't been paying attention to how Big Pharma actually works. Who says Big Pharma isn't behind this? They are the people. Big Pharma is who we are running to for help. So for this article to imply that Big Pharma is not behind anything, I wouldn't even say it's behind anything. I would say that they have their best interest in mind, and that is sell more drugs. That is the pharmaceutical industry's job. the healthcare industry's job is supposed to be to heal people and get them better. It has become almost taboo to use the word cure in healthcare. We don't cure people anymore. That's just not how it works. And that's a real shame, because healing and restoring health to somebody is still a fully possible thing, and it's like the medical model that we're in now just totally rejects that idea. No, the video says that masks activate the virus. Where's the evidence for that? There isn't any. This, by the way, is a specific claim that Facebook cites in removing the video as misinformation. Suggesting that wearing a mask can make you sick could lead to imminent harm, so we're removing the video. The company told the New York Times, the fact is that wearing a mask causes you to rebreathe your own air over and over. Your exhaled air is considered waste in the form of CO2, so rebreathing your own waste seems like a bad idea just at face value. Does staying inside weaken our immune systems? This one's my favorite. No, why would it? There is a theory that exposure to microbes while children are growing up can affect their immune function as adults, but there is no known phenomenon in which immunity fades when we stay inside. There are plenty of microbes inside our homes anyway. So this is frustrating because it's not just about children. It's exposure for all things, for everybody. We are constantly touching and interacting with microorganisms, and if you're somebody who never goes outside in the woods, and then you go outside in the woods, everything is going to react to you. Everything is going to make you itchy and sneezy and things like that. If you're somebody who's out in the woods a lot, you're going to be it's not going to be such a shock to you, because the different microorganisms in the woods and in nature that you're going to come in contact with are your body is used to them. The whole idea that this is trying to discredit Dr. Erickson and Dr. Masihi, I can't ever say that, the Bakersfield, California doctors whose videos were also banned for saying the same thing. Germs are good for us, and does staying inside weaken our immune systems? Yes, it does. You know why? Because it's depressing. Like this whole article, it's not this. These people don't care about your health, and they care about proving people wrong and making money and getting controversy and division among America. That's what they care about, and it's disgusting. It's hard to show the true numbers, but since tests still aren't widely available, we're more likely to be undercounting than overcounting. Except that they are counting anything and everything as a COVID-19 death. I mean, there are people, this has been happening for over a month now, probably 2 months now, that people are saying, hey, my loved one died in a car accident, or, from this or that, and they're counting it as a COVID death, even though I told them not to. And it was unrelated. You can die with the virus. It doesn't mean you died from the virus. There's a huge difference. And we also know, and there have been lots of doctors that have spoken up and said that they are being pressured into tagging it as a COVID death, even without a positive test. Do hospitals get more money if they diagnose a patient with COVID-19 or put them on a ventilator? Yes, because hospitals charge more for treatments that require more resources. But the thing is that this is not an appropriate treatment method. Putting somebody on a ventilator is not what we need to do. There's a lot of reports now saying that it's almost like high altitude sickness, like they're hypoxic, but they're still alert and walking around, and that's not normal. So a lot of people are suggesting just increased oxygen. I would even say like a hyperbaric oxygen treatment would be great. Every hospital should have one of those for wounds and stuff, but that is really something that would, especially if it is hypoxemia, then that seems like a good treatment for it. But anyways, what do I know? The other thing too with the ventilator is it inhibits our cough reflex, so we're not able to eliminate any junk. And the thing too is with ventilators is, it's like 90% of people with COVID die if they're put on a ventilator. They have no success rate, and you have to be sedated, so you can't cough and you can't move, which are the two things that we know are what keep us healthy. So I ain't buying it. So, like, at one point they say there's another thing too, and it's a flaw in all conspiracy theories. How do you get every pharma company and every world government in on the grift? I had to Google what grift meant. It means small or petty, small scale or petty. Basically saying, like, the whole CDC is in on this, and I think that's really that's not what she was saying at all. She was saying that there was a small amount of people in a one little department on one study who were changing things and who were the problem. It's hardly a conspiracy when you say it like that. And I would say, just in my experiences in healthcare, that there's really like a dogma, like I don't know, it's like you just don't question your higher up people in a lot of senses. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm not saying everything she said is true, but I am saying that I don't think we should just be discrediting, or all those people believe women, and then all of a sudden this woman comes out and actually says something that we might need to look into. She's got a lot of information, and again, like, this whole article is not fact-checking her. It's just saying that, like, there are a lot of people who believe what she believes about the immune system and about health and about vaccines, and all this is doing is just calling people like her, people like me, crazy, rather than actually looking at the science that might suggest otherwise. So also, one of the things was, once you think about it, you'll see right through this in a second. Did they really use a closing shot of Fauci predicting a pandemic to imply that he started it? Look, I'm not saying he started it, but what I am saying is Fauci and Gates have been predicting this for years with certainty, and it's a little suspicious to me that the people who own the patent for the vaccine are the ones making that are so involved with this. I don't know, that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It feels very much like there's some, what's the word, conflict of interest there. So that's pretty much the whole article. I said I wasn't going to read it. I didn't read all of it, but you get the idea. It's really just a lot of trying to discredit without inserting any different credit. You know, it's trying to say that she's wrong and crazy, but again, it doesn't give you any real reasons to. It questions the things that she says, but it doesn't give any proof behind any of it. And that's fine if you want to question what she says, but I think that it's all stuff that we need to be willing to look into and not just discredit. I mean, the CDC is a giant organization, and it would be very easy for them to manipulate something if they wanted to. And they certainly don't have checks and balances to prevent that. So I just wanted to do this because it really upset me. And frankly, it disappointed me, the people who were sharing this article, who were so disappointed with me for sharing that one. So I just wanted a different perspective on the subject, and to kind of further the discussion in saying that you don't have to believe everything that this woman said to believe that there is some real sketchy stuff going on that we need to be looking into. So anyway, until next time, I'm Just Jame, and I'm just trying to change your perspective and get you to think about things for yourself. So I'll talk to you later.